so much. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
to
of the United States of America and to the republic
which stands
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Now, Leslie, my dear Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Matthey,
Here.
Trustee Bolin,
Here.
Trustee Milawambwe,
Here.
Trustee Emig,
Here.
Trustee Painter,
Here.
Trustee Correa,
Here.
Trustee Black,
Here.
Trustee Crable. I know that he's getting on, so we'll get him in just a second. And then I know that Trustee Bray is absent, and we have Trustee Renner.
I'm here as well. Thank you. And we still were waiting for who, Madam Clerk, if you'd clarify for the record?
Trustee Crable. He does have the login information. He should be on in just a moment.
Okay. All right.
There he
Oh,
is.
there he is. I see him. Jeff, can you hear us? Jeff?
Yes, I can. Can you hear
There
me?
you are. Okay, we are good to go. You're
I'm
here.
the last one.
Yeah, don't feel guilty. Okay, thank you so much. At this point, we're going to move to our consent agenda. Are there any items that any trustee would like to have removed for separate consideration on the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Move as approved, or moved as presented, excuse me.
We knew what you meant, Scott. Thank you. Moved by Trustee Black. Is there a second?
Second.
By Trustee Emig. I'm not sure who else was there, but I recognize Julie's voice. At this point, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? Thank you.
Trustee Matthey,
Yes.
Trustee Bolin,
Yes.
Trustee Milawambwe.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Emig,
Yes.
Trustee Painter,
Yes.
Trustee Carrillo,
Yes.
Trustee Black,
Yes.
Trustee Crable,
Yes.
Trustee Renner.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, motion carries. We next have audit report for fiscal year April 1st, 2019, 2019 through March 31st, 2020. As presented, the Township Board, is there a motion to have the audit being accepted and placed on file?
So moved.
Moved, thank you, by Trustee Matthey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I'm not sure who else was there, but I did see that Maboka had seconded that. So second by Trustee Milawambwe. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
What?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody have a,
I'm not
Trustee
sure.
Bolin.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm not sure if this has to do with the audit or not, but I do have some questions regarding the combined statement of receipts and reimbursements.
Okay. Go ahead. Since this it's at least indirectly related, so go ahead.
Okay.
Bolin, you got the floor.
Okay. I guess I just want to know, I'm looking at the different numbers here, and it's not clear to me which is an expenditure and which is an revenue. So I'm looking at Connect Transit, $26,000. Could you explain, is that the township giving Connect Transit that money, or Connect Transit is giving the township that money?
Could you please, Trustee Bolin, tell me what page you're on for that?
It's kind of near the end. It's combined statements of receipts and disbursements. I don't have a page number.
Oh, I see it. I see it. So that's through the general assistance. We provide a bus pass for transportation for workfare and medical, and that's where that's coming from. We buy that in a large quantity at cheaper before they actually raise the prices. We try to buy the year's worth.
Okay, so that's actually an expense from the township to provide service for the needy.
It's not through the general town, it's through the general assistance fund.
Right,
Yes.
okay,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Bolin. Any additional questions? Okay, therefore, is there a motion?
We already made that.
Trustee Renner, we have a motion by trustee Matthew and a second by trustee Milawambwe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
Trustee
so much.
Matthew,
Yes.
trustee Bolin,
Yes.
trustee Milawambwe,
Yes.
trustee Emig,
Yes.
trustee Painter,
Yes.
trustee Carrillo,
Yes.
trustee Black,
Yes.
trustee Crable,
Yes.
trustee Renner.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you again, Madam Clerk. Presentation next we have of the annual treasurer's report from April 1st, 2019 through March 31st, 2020. Do we have a motion to accept this? And then we certainly can have questions or further comments here. Any motion to accept this as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by trustee Bolin. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you by trustee Milawambwe. Any questions, comments on this?
May I make a comment, please?
Oh,
I just wanted to-
Deb, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to make note for the minutes, so it's put in order that the trustee Boland's question really came from this particular agenda item,
Okay.
not the audit.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Mhm.
Anything else? Okay, Madam Clerk, would you go ahead and call the roll on this item? Thank you.
Trustee Matthew,
Yes.
trustee Bolin, sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Trustee, thank you. Trustee Milawambwe,
Yes.
trustee Emig,
Yes.
trustee Painter,
Yes.
trustee Carrillo,
Yes.
trustee Black,
Yes.
trustee Crable,
Yes.
trustee Renner.
Yes, thank you so much. Next, we have a discussion under item number 7 of an ordinance for compensation for township officials for 2021 through 2025. Do we have any comments for the record on this issue or concerns, et cetera?
I need to make one comment, please, on the ordinance itself. This is Supervisor Deb.
Yes, thank
The number 5 on the ordinance was accidentally omitted from the ordinance. It was on last 2016's. It just needed to be added to it.
Thank you very much. Anything else, either for the record or concerns? Excuse me. Okay. Thank you so much. And there's no action particularly required on this. We're going to move to our reports by our elected officials. And we're going to start with Ms. Skillroot and then Mr. Scudder. Ms. Skillroot.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make note a couple of things that are on my supervisor's report. The 113th Annual Educational Conference for Township Officials of Illinois is coming up. There is a day for trustees on that, and it's $99. Township covers it, and it is virtual this year. So if you're interested in attending, I think if Madam Clerk is okay with this, that maybe she collect the names and figure out, and then get them to me so we can register.
Okay. Madam Clerk, are you okay with
Everybody
that?
who's interested.
Yeah, that's no problem. I'll send an email this week and get that over to you as soon as I can.
Okay,
Thank you.
fantastic. So if
And I
anyone is
have-
interested, please contact Leslie Yoakum. I'm sorry, Ms. Skillroot.
No, that's okay. Have Leslie, and then she'll contact me. Or
Okay.
it
Do you have
doesn't,
anything
one way or the other,
Still-
one way or the other. The other thing that I wanted to make note of, and I apologize for not doing this 2 sessions ago, trustee Crable asked that I update you on COVID impact and how we're, I just missed talking about it. So I wanted to explain to you, and I put this in the supervisor's report, that the general assistance program really hasn't been impacted much due to COVID at this time.
Do you want to get a little here?
Oh,
They need your help right now. If they're going
I think there's some feedback going on. If somebody would mute,
Lose weight fast. Money
Oh,
back
for God's sake.
guaranteed.
I think somebody's TV
Sorry,
is
that's
on.
me.
Okay. Okay, so there is no impact at this point. It's very minimal, if anything. We're seeing clients the way we have always seen clients. They're restricted, based on state statute and guidelines that we have. I did send out a report to everybody regarding how many referrals came from the city of Bloomington, and then what we did with them at that point. Most of those, we only accommodated a small number of them. I believe it was somewhere around 10 or 11. And then the others, due to restrictions that we have at township, such as somebody being on SSI or they're class X, class 1 drug felons. Some of those things restrict us from being able to help. So we forward those on to Mid-Central Community Action. Mid-Central Community Action is taking, at least at this moment, taking the most of the burden for the help that's needed in our community. So I did want to say that between all of the agencies, and then there's an additional funding, I think the need's going to be covered for quite a while. Let me explain that a little bit. Township helps initially for a majority of the individuals, and then we refer directly to Mid-Central Community Action if we can't help. Mid-Central Community Action can handle 3 months worth, and then City of Bloomington, in my understanding, talking with Jennifer Toney, they can help with 6 months worth of help. Now, I just learned today with Karen Zangerly at PATH that they are granted Emergency Solutions Grant, which is $340,000 interjected into our community to help with rent and assistance with utilities for, what did she say? Just 6 months ongoing. So we've got a lot of help in the community. I don't know in the end if township will be affected until all of the other federal funding and state funding is exhausted. So, but we're here and ready to serve the need. If I have offered services to Mid-Central Community Action if they need it, because they are kind of behind the schedule a little bit. So I have offered services just to make sure that they know that we're available if they need us.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions of Ms. Skillroot at this point? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Skillroot. We'll move on to Mr. Scudder. Steve?
I'm sorry, I just one more.
Oh.
Sorry. Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Okay, property condition assessment. I do want to say that Farnsworth is the firm that offers architectural and engineering services, and their RFP that they provided to the township is the type of work that we'll be doing at township. So I wanted to make note in the minutes that the Illinois Professional Services Selection Act applies to that type of work. The city of Bloomington has a satisfactory relationship with Farnsworth, and we want to continue working with them. So we are not required to go through the formal RFP process. And so we have this week we'll finalize the contract with them.
Great.
And then provide
what? I'm sorry.
We'll provide results to the board after we hear.
Thank you very much. Mr. Scudder. Steve? Madam Clerk, is Mr. Scudder online?
He is online. He's muted. Steve, if you're
Steve,
speaking,
can you
we
unmute
can't
yourself?
hear you.
Can you
There
hear
he
me?
goes. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay.
go ahead.
The assessments were published in the Panagraph on the 25th of September. If there is a dispute on the assessments, they can file an appeal form through the County Board of Review. The deadline to have the appeal complaint form in is October the 26th. Our date of appraisal is January 1 of 2020 for this year. I have attached a complaint form and all the rules for the County Board of Review to the package. If you have any questions on any of the appeal process, please let me or anybody in my office know.
Thank you very much. Questions of Mr. Scudder? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there public comment, Madam Clerk, with the township?
No, Trustee Renner, there is not.
Okay, thank you so much. At this point, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Matthey. Is there a second?
Second.
second by trustee Black. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, we're adjourned. I'll, given that we're in transition, we will start in 1 minute in case anyone might need a little bit of a break. And we're going to start at 6:02. Okay. All righty. Thank you. We're adjourned. We're going to wait for 1 minute in case anyone needs a break. All right.
You'll be ready.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the City of Bloomington City Council to order. At this point, if we could have a begin to do a pledge allegiance to the flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the
of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
visible,
and
with liberty
and justice for all.
for all.
If we have a moment of silence, thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Thank you.
Councilmember Matthey,
Here.
Councilmember Bolin,
Here.
Councilmember Milawangwe,
Here.
Councilmember Emig,
Present.
Councilmember Painter,
Here.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Here.
Councilmember Black,
Here.
Councilmember Crable,
Here.
Councilmember Bray is absent, and Mayor Ritter.
Here, thank you so much. We're going to start with a COVID update by our city manager, Mr. Gleason. Are you there?
Yes, I am, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Just a quick update that the compliance checks continue by the Bloomington Police Department. We are seeing compliance. Any complaints are being forwarded to the Liquor Commission and Liquor Commissioner, the mayor, and there are no new ones this past week. Kept a close eye on the Jazz Up Front event, and everything was as it should have been. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just FYI, on the heels of what Mr. Gleason has said, just so that the council understands it for the public record, there still are some, a few concerns and complaints from a few of the proprietors in town. They are not serious. They're not repeated offenses. They're just situations where people were encouraged, or proprietors were encouraged to comply. And according to the police, there was immediate compliance. So just to let you all know. At this point, we're going to move to a proclamation recognizing October 4th through the 10th, 2020 as Fire Protection Week, as requested by the administration. At this point, do we have our distinguished fire chief online?
Yes, Mayor, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just want to read the proclamation quickly here, but it's Fire Protection Week, October 4th through 2020. Excuse me, October 4th through the 10th, 2020. Whereas the city of Bloomington is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting Bloomington. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. Whereas home fires killed more than 2,630 people in the United States in 2017, according to the National Fire Protection Association, and fire departments in the United States responded to 57,000 home fires. And whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, where fire departments responded to more than 173,200 annually, and between 2013 and 2017. And whereas 2 of every 5 homes fires start in the kitchen, with 31% of those fires resulting from unattended cooking. And whereas more than half of reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves, and whereas children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than being burned in a cooking fire, whereas Bloomington residents should stay in the kitchen when frying food on the stovetop, keep a 3-foot child-free zone around cooking areas, and keep anything that can catch fire away from stovetops. And whereas residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas Bloomington's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas Bloomington residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas the 2020 Fire Prevention Week theme, serve up fire safety in the kitchen, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Therefore, I, Terry Renner, Mayor of the City of Bloomington, do hereby proclaim October 4th through the 10th, 2020 as fire protection throughout the state. And I urge all people of Bloomington, by checking their kitchens for fire hazards and using safe cooking practices during the week 2020, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of Bloomington Fire and Emergency Services. Thank you very much. And thank you, Chief. Any comments you'd like to make?
Thank you, Mary. Yes, I would like to say a couple things. I'd like to recognize our public education officer, Eric Davison. Fire Prevention Week is obviously a week long, but it truly spends most of the month of October getting around and working with the local schools. Obviously, because COVID has had such an impact, changing the way we are delivering our message. So he has worked with local schools to develop a virtual tour of our headquarters fire station. And then he follows that up with a question and answer session that's live. Not only that, continue to have a prominent message on Facebook. And we have over 12,000 followers on our Facebook account, and many of our posts are seen by over 35,000 people. And then finally, Eric's also working with the Public Education Division of the Chicago Fire Department and an additional 229 agencies throughout the state of Illinois to provide a full 40-hour schedule of fire and life safety topics for any student in Illinois to tune into throughout the Fire Prevention Week. So just wanted to share some of those efforts that he's doing. Again, it's changed the way we're delivering our message, but he's very active and want to recognize him for his efforts. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chief. And thank you for all you and your department do. We're all very much appreciative of your work and efforts, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to move to public comment. Madam Clerk, is there anyone who's online?
So we had an issue with email. We don't have anyone online live, but we do have 6 people present in the fishbowl. And it's a little unorthodox. I don't have full names because we were coming up with a non-electronic process, but I'll just call their last names, Long, Hurley, and then Garcia.
Mr. or Ms. Long, Hurley, and then Garcia. Long? Hello?
They're just approaching.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name's Cecilia. I'm a Bloomington resident of Ward 4, and I've lived in this community for 6 years. Today, I'd like to speak against the relationship that our local police and local government have been allowed to have with ICE and speak in favor of a welcoming cities ordinance. The Immigrants and Custom Enforcement Agency is a broken system that has done irreparable harm on immigrant children and their families and continues to haunt our communities and destroy lives. I watched one of my own students see one of her parents taken away during the pandemic with no warning that put their family in a position where my student had to overnight become the sole income earner for their siblings and mom, while also trying to continue school and achieve a degree. That's not right. It's not right for families to be torn apart, stuck in cages and alone. Now across the country, over 2,000 children and tens and thousands of adults remain in immigration detention, and now young women are having their uteruses forcibly removed, robbing their right to joy of having a family. This is beyond disturbing and unacceptable that anyone is treated this way. We need our local municipalities to take a stand and refuse to work with ICE. We need a welcoming cities ordinance that cuts ties with ICE on all levels of government, especially local police work. Coordination with ICE makes our local government complicit in ICE's crimes and against humanity. We saw the town of Normal pass a welcoming cities ordinance in 2018 while Bloomington failed to pass one. We're asking you now, as ICE has continued to destroy people's lives and separate families, that you act on this with urgency and reintroduce the welcoming cities ordinance with this time and pass it. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, who's next? I'm sorry.
Next up will be Hurley, then Garcia and Steinling.
Okay. Hurley?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
More than 70% of people held in detention centers built under the Trump administration are under the purview of the New Orleans field office, which denied 99.1% of asylum seekers. Between January 2017 and March 2020, 12 people have died of apparent suicide. Detention centers are so understaffed it could take over a week to receive any medical treatments, such as resetting a broken bone or getting a life-saving medication, such as an albuterol inhaler for an asthmatic such as myself. My name is Sarah Hurley. I am a resident of Ward 6. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I stand before you to plead for an acceptance of a welcoming ordinance in this city. We have seen and heard the atrocities that have and still take place within ICE detention facilities. Separating families, losing children, rampant disease, and now mass hysterectomies. Enough is enough. The Trust Act alone does not protect our families, our friends, our coworkers from bias, from racism that could potentially give them the same fate. So I call upon the council to do the right thing, because to call this city a progressive city means to be a diverse city and protect all of the people who live here. I urge the council to act swiftly to make the city welcoming, not only for the business owners, not only for the white folks, but for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Madam Clerk, who's in line?
Next up is Garcia, Steinling, and then Mackinac.
Garcia?
Hello, my name is Sonny Garcia. I live in Bloomington in Ward 6. I'm here today to implore the current council to immediately act to implement a welcoming cities ordinance in the city of Bloomington. We've been fighting for years to protect our immigrant brothers and sisters that live here in Bloomington. We have mobilized hundreds of McLean County residents to stand up and demand action on this issue. We have voted out a 20-year incumbent for their lack of courage to stand up for the rights of our most vulnerable residents. We have marched, we have fasted, and we have voted, and still members of this council refuse to see the urgency of the situation. First, ICE started separating families. Then ICE began putting children in cages. Now ICE is forcing hysterectomies on young immigrant women. There's an inherent evil and vileness to the action of the current administration and their modern-day brown shirts. They systematically dehumanize human immigrant men, women, and children in their efforts to secure more votes for their xenophobic base. Enough is enough. It is time to officially cut all ties with ICE on all government levels, which include city, county, and state. We expect you to do the right thing and pass a welcoming cities ordinance by the end of 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next was Scott Steinley, is that correct, Madam
That's
Clerk?
correct. Yep, Steinling, then Mackinac, and last will be Alvarez.
Okay.
Scott Steinling, Ward 5. My concern is I know an individual that earned her citizenship. She came from another country, and this is absolutely unforgivable. If they want to earn their citizenship, fine, but don't let them just crawl under the fence. If they come here, have children, fine. The children are natural born citizens, and they can earn their citizenship or go back to where they came from. The storm inlets are simply are unable to process the volume of water as fast as it comes down when we have the quote 100-year rains. It amazes me that we have had several quote 100-year rains recently. Being at the bottom of a steep hill, these plugged the inlets up. One time it got so bad it was started up my drive and I went out in the middle of the night. This is absolutely unforgivable. The street was flooded. This shows poor planning on the city's part. Tim Gleason applied for the job and unfortunately was hired. If he wants the job, fine, do the job. All sidewalks were to be AD accessible in 1990, which was 30 years ago, and they are still not AD accessible. And consequently, the money the city wasted on the scoreboards, as Terry refers to them, that could have been used to install, plus the privacy glass, could have been used to install update the roads, and it could have been used to raise the inlets and the streets. Terry, you've got this city thinking what you want them to think. And, you know, I'm embarrassed to say that Terry Renner's the mayor of the city of Bloomington. The drop-off facility does not have to be manned, which is another expense, whether you claim it does or not. What about normal? That's not manned, is it? And so there's another waste of taxpayer dollars. Terry, if you would really be concerned about the expenses in the city, you would wake up and realize that people have just about had it. Why are the curbs level with the grass? You know, and Tim Gleason, he can go back to Decatur where he came from.
Okay, next, Madam Clerk, who's next?
Oh, sorry, Mackinac and then Alvarez.
Mackinac and Alvarez. Thank you.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hello. My name and my face are not important because it's not about me. Because these words are not simply coming through me, but through all who stand against injustice and through the tears and the pleas of the victims of the injustice of ICE. The struggle against genocide, both past and present, is one that we cannot simply put aside as not our problem, one that can be solved by future generations or federal legislation. The issue begins here, locally, by the people in defense of our most vulnerable residents. When I say past and present, I hope this contextualizes our issue in this struggle. What was done to American indigenous people from the beginning of the United States history to manifest destiny, the criminalization of indigenous cultures, languages, and religions under American law until 1978, way after, a decade after the Civil Rights Act, and the epidemic of murders and rapes and disappearances of indigenous women and children is a direct line of historical events that lead to now with ICE's detention centers, there are concentration camps, and that's how we need to understand this. This is a genocide, and to not act, to not vote means you're complicit in this genocide that is continuing and has continued for over 400 years. The bigger issue, or this issue, is bigger than Trump in his administration, bigger than simple reforms, but we must begin to help these vulnerable people, or else there's no hope. There's no hope for a better future for those captives of American policy, genocide, and white supremacy. This is why I reached out to City Council to vote on and pass the Welcome Sydney Ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Alvarez. Charlotte?
Hi, good evening. I'm Charlotte Alvarez. I'm the director of the Immigration Project. We also echo the other members and citizens of the community here asking for meaningful passage of a Welcoming City Ordinance. We worked on this issue with y'all for quite a while, and we still haven't resolved this point. And it looks like it's not going away until we have a meaningful reform and a Welcoming City Ordinance that passes and protects all of our citizens. Under any administration, under any national government, ICE has been shown to be duplicitous and to continue to hurt the communities it is saying that it serves. We cannot be part of the system. We cannot be sending people into detention centers that are rampant with the coronavirus to be sent back to communities. And we cannot be part of the separation of families. So we ask the city of Bloomington to pass a Welcoming City Ordinance that meaningfully and finally reflects a commitment to our immigrant community here in Bloomington. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that that concludes the public comment, Madam Clerk? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, we're going to move to the consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the city council would like to have removed for separate consideration from the consent agenda that we have this evening? I'm looking, okay. I don't see anyone. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented then?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Boland, second by Councilmember Black with his peace sign. Reminds me of Nixon. Kidding. At this point, Madam Clerk, would you go ahead and call the roll? Thank you.
Councilmember Mathey,
Yes.
Councilmember Boland,
Yes.
Councilmember Milawambwe,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Painter,
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Yes.
Councilmember Black,
Yes.
Councilmember Crable,
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we have under item 9A, presentation, status update, and discussion on comprehensive update to Bloomington's sign ordinance as requested by the Economic and Community Development Department and the Legal Department. And I'm going to actually turn this over for some brief comments and introductions to our city manager, and then we're going to go to Mr. Housel from Housel and Levine.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First two items on the regular agenda are presentations. I'm going to turn this over for Melissa Hahn, the Community Economic Development Director, to make the introduction and any additional opening comments. Melissa?
Thank you, Mayor and Council and City Manager. Yes, tonight we have before you an update to the sign code ordinance. And as you are aware, the advertising sign code in Chapter 3 regulates a variety of signs with the intention to protect the public safety, investment, property rights, and the local economy. The most recent comprehensive revision of the city's advertising sign code occurred in 1998. And since that time, there have been a number of changes in the law and technology that affect this. So this updated draft of the sign ordinance addresses new technologies such as LED signs, electronic message boards, and reflects recent Supreme Court rulings and changes in federal regulations. And so at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Katie Simpson to tell you a little bit more about the public outreach process moving forward after tonight's presentation. And then after she's finished, she'll go ahead and introduce our presenters for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. As Melissa said, tonight we're not asking for any action, but we do intend to come back with a resolution initiating a public hearing process to open up that public discussion about with the Planning Commission about the sign ordinance, and then ultimately come back to council for action. But this has been in the works for a while. We started this in June of last year. We did a kickoff meeting and then held a few public outreach sessions with residents, business owners, and sign contractors. We also did an online survey, which John and Jackie will talk about during their presentation. The survey was made available in both Spanish and English, and also online and with paper copies available upon request. And then we've had 2 working sessions with both Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. So tonight is just kind of a get this back on council's radar, and there's been a little bit of a hiatus with COVID-19. So we just want to continue moving this forward. And with that, I will hand this over to John Housel and Jackie Wells with Housel Levine Associates.
Thanks, Katie. Mr. Mayor and Commission, or City Council, thanks for having us on the agenda this evening. I think we're going to get a presentation loaded up here. As Katie said, we're not looking for action this evening. This is something we've been working on with Katie, with George, to ensure the correct legal perspective, and other staff members in the community and public to bring your sign ordinance sort of where it needs to be from a technological and legal perspective. So what we're going to go through is just sort of the highlights on what it is that we did and why. We're not going to get into a high level of granularity because there's a lot to cover, but we want to give you a sense of what we've been working on over the last several months with city staff and the public. So the main purpose of updating the sign ordinance is to align it with Bring It On Bloomington, your comprehensive plan, to review the existing code for suitability to the downtown's character, as sort of the emphasis on downtown is even more so than it has been in the past. To adapt code to encourage signs that are visible to pedestrians, to bicyclists, making sure that everything is not geared toward only really large signage just for automobiles at higher rates of speed. And to adapt a sign code to discourage sign placement in sizes that detract from the downtown's character. We wanted to make sure that the signs were more appropriate depending on the commercial character of where they happen to be placed in the city. The other main reason was to take a look at legal requirements. There was a Supreme Court case in 2015 called R3b v. Gilbert. And what R3b v. Gilbert declared from the Supreme Court was that you couldn't regulate signage based on content. And the case involved in Gilbert, Arizona, had to do with church signage or religious institution signage and commercial signage. But the takeaway from the Supreme Court decision was that you couldn't regulate signage based on content. And when that gavel came down at the Supreme Court, about 95% of sign ordinances in the US became, at least some aspect became non-compliant, because a lot of sign ordinances out there had at least some components of regulations that were based on the content of the sign, and Bloomington was no exception. So we had to go through and do sort of a content audit of your sign ordinance, your sign code, and rewrite certain sections so that it wasn't regulated based on the content of the sign, but on the type of sign or placement of sign, things like that. So I clarified the commercial signage, non-commercial sign copy is protected speech, free speech, and that held that signs cannot be treated differently because of what they're communicating or the content of the sign. So these are the two main reasons we really had to take a look at your sign ordinance. We had to from a legal perspective, and then in alignment with your comprehensive plan perspective. Next slide. Slow transition. We did this. We did not do this in a vacuum. We did this working extensively. So we had a plan commission project kickoff and a workshop with the plan commission back in June 2019. We had 4 focus group meetings to discuss this during the month of July. We had a joint plan commission and ZBA workshop September 11th. We had online questionnaires, as Katie just said, both in English and in Spanish online, allowing people to look at what we were talking about, to select their preferences, to say what they liked and what they didn't like. And this included participation from residents as well as business owners and operators. So it wasn't just business owners and it wasn't just residents, but it was a mixture of the two. And then we had a plan commission working session in February 11th to go over this as well. So we've tried to be and have been very transparent as we've evolved through this process to make sure we gauged input along the way. Based on that feedback, we developed initial ideas and recommendations. We then put those recommendations and idea out there to the public. Based on feedback, we made another round of revisions to recalibrate it a little bit more based on what we were hearing from the public. So some of the major changes that we're proposing is to revise some of the sign areas to allow for more proportional signs based on buildings that they're located on. I'll give you an example a little bit later, but for instance, your existing sign code allows in your downtown on a building, a historic building, even if it's a small building, a wall sign up to 300 square feet. Well, imagine in your council chambers right there, a sign that went from floor to ceiling, 30 feet long. That's a massive sign. That's a 300 square foot sign. Well, by the time you put a sign like that in a historic building downtown, you've covered up windows, cornices, architectural features. It doesn't proportionately fit the character of the community. So we wanted to really sort of right size or proportional size of signs. We wanted to make sure that different sign types and regulations were based on different commercial areas. A best example of this is regulations for signs on Veterans Parkway, where the traffic is a higher rate of speed, primarily vehicular, larger properties, setback from the front lot line. signage there cannot be the same as signage in your downtown. It just would not fit. It doesn't make sense. So we wanted to make sure that signage was appropriate depending on the different environments of town. And your comprehensive plan did a very good job of establishing the character of the different places of town. So we had a good footprint. We wanted to improve the temporary sign regulations. These are signs that are not permanently affixed to buildings or intended to be up all the time, but look around your environment. There are temporary signs all over the city that get used on a regular basis. We have to allow these, but regulate them. We also wanted to take a look at new technologies. There's a lot of new technologies out there, primarily with changeable copy or video or words or digital signs that can change. So we need to take a look at those. And then we need to make the ordinance more user-friendly through both concise text and better graphics. So an idea of some of the things that we went through, and also some of the things that we put online in our questionnaire. We made some of the questionnaires components very visual. So what you'll see there on the left is a type of building you might see on Veterans Parkway, big, huge, large standalone building, maybe you have parking in front of it. So we took a look and proportionally did sign sizes on those walls that you might see on Veterans Parkway. What would a 5% sign look like? A 10% sign look like? A larger sign look like? And we put this out there to people online and said, what size sign proportionally do you think is appropriate? Initially, we were coming in, I think, around the 5% mark, but after feedback and visualizing it, we doubled what we initially came out with at 5% to 10%, because that's the middle one you see there that people seem to be most comfortable with. This is a pretty large sign for the building. Some communities it's less than 10%, but 10% worked on Veterans Parkway. So this is the type of question we had for Veterans Parkway and the type of signage. If we were to simply say, what do you prefer, 5, 10, or 20%? Nobody knows what that means in terms of visuals. So we created these visuals and we actually moved to a larger sign than we had initially proposed based on feedback. If you look at the images on the right of your screen, you'll see a typical downtown building, a historic building right at the sidewalk. The adjacent buildings were right next to it. And again, we looked at signs that were 5, 10, or a sign that was reflective of your current standards and put it out there and said, what did you find most appropriate? What we had found is, and what we kept our recommendation was the first one you see on the left there, which is a 5% max wall sign coverage. It fits the architecture, nothing covers up. It's scaled appropriately for the building. As the building gets bigger, the sign gets bigger because it's 5% of the wall area. So there's not one specific size of sign. It varies with the size of the building. So it stays proportional. What you see on the far right is how big a sign can be in your downtown, which if signs were built as of right, as big as they could be in downtown, you would start to see a lot of signs that would cover up architectural features and just look disproportionately huge for a walking pedestrian environment. So these are the types of visuals that we put out there into the community to get feedback on the questionnaires online. And again, in some of them, our initial recommendations held true, as in the 5% for downtown wall signs, whereas for the signage on Veterans Parkway, we went from 5% and increased it to 10% based on city feedback or community feedback. The other thing that we took a look at was changeable copy signs. And this is, a case of LaCroix, $3.99 at Walgreens, or McFlurry is back at McDonald's. And the message may change all the time. And I'm a business owner. I get the need for businesses to be able to communicate through signage. And when a lot of these ordinances were written, that technology didn't exist. And now it's not only static changeable copy signs, but some advertising can be literally TV screens where it's animated video. I mean, of anything and everything. And imagine if you had a 300 square foot video monitor next to the street, if it was just running video. Well, imagine if you had a whole bunch of those. Imagine if every store had a 300 square foot TV monitor, and you can imagine the worst case scenario. So we took a look at, but we want to accommodate the technology. It is crucial to businesses to be able to communicate and advertise, and we fully understand that. So our initial take on this, and we've done this in other communities, was that you could have changeable copy sign. It had to be static imagery. So it wasn't animated. It was a static image that after a set period of time could rotate to another static image. So the message could change on a regular basis, but it wasn't like a video screen where there was animation, movie, TV type stuff. So our initial, I think we initially started out at about a 2-minute static image. We then went to a 30-second static image, and where we ended up was a 10-second static image. So we looked at some of the other communities that you'll see here, and this is what you'll see on the screen. So they range anywhere from like 4 seconds down to the small end. There's a 3-second one, all the way up to 10 or 30 seconds. And most of these, they don't allow animation. They don't allow anything to be flashing or strobing or scrolling. What it is typically is a static image that changes on a regular basis. And whether it's a picture or whether it's words, doesn't matter. But the static image changes at a set interval maximum. And that's sort of to dovetail with visual clutter, traffic safety, not being a distraction to drivers driving by, etc. So our recommendation, you can go to the next screen. This is just more of these. Again, we looked at a ton of these. And where we ended up, again, we started out with a 2-minute static image transition. We went from there to a 30 seconds and ended up with our recommendation being 10 seconds. So an image could flash up, 10 seconds later, that image could go away and another image could go up. So go to the next one. So that's part of our technology immigration stuff, our integration stuff. So again, it's a pretty lengthy and detailed code. It's very easy to go through because we've made it very simple. The areas of signage are now proportional in many cases to the size of the building or the linear frontage of the property. If you have a building that has 200 feet of frontage versus a building that has 50 feet of frontage, if you have a 300 feet of frontage and a huge building, you will be allowed to have a larger sign than a 50-foot wide parcel with a small little bitty building. So it's proportional with minimums. So no one's going to be proportioned out of signage. We've tried to accommodate technology, both in reader boards, changeable copy, as well as other types of signage, and have made sure that, for instance, a real estate sign could be regulated in the past by sign, or a political yard sign. Well, when you talk about politics, that's content. When you talk about a real estate sign, that's content. We can't do that anymore. So a real estate sign or a political yard sign can be classified as a yard sign, a type of sign. And we can regulate that type of sign. We cannot regulate it based on the content. So we can't have regulations for political signs. We can't have regulations for high school booster signs. We can't have regulations for real estate signs. If it's a yard sign, it doesn't matter what's on it, it's a yard sign. So we had to change the way those regulations were written. So in many cases, it wasn't about making signage bigger. In many cases, it wasn't necessarily about making signage smaller or less restrictive. We tried to be realistic. We tried to be proportional, context sensitive, and accommodating of new technologies. So that's why we took a look at your sign code. And those are the areas of signage that we changed. So I guess with that, Mr. Mayor, before I go on to R3b, I guess it's another agenda item, I would open it up to any questions you might have for me, George, Katie, or Jackie, an associate with our firm, who was really heavily involved with this along the way as well. And she's on the phone or the call as well.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And so with questions with respect to item 9A only, because we're going to come back to item 9B. We have questions on item 9A only. I'm looking.
Mayor, you have Councilmember Matthey and Councilmember Bolin with their hands up.
Okay, thank you, because I'm having trouble finding that. Councilmember Matthey and then Bolin. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Do we have a proposed final draft of this available online for our business community to start reading and going through this? Is this available somewhere yet?
Yes.
And
This
where
is-
is that at?
Can you expand? Yeah, thank you.
Jamie, I can address that. This is on the city's website under the planning and zoning page. We have a link to the new draft as well as all the meeting minutes and results of the survey. So there's a separate, I'll email the link to City Manager Gleason to share with you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I've also gotten a significant amount of reach out from the business community as well. And before we can vote on this, I think that we need to have a presentation in coordination with the Chamber of Commerce to get this final draft out there. There are a lot of questions I've been receiving from businesses that want to know how this is going to affect them, from property owners who want to know how this is going to affect them. And I can't think of a better way to reach a vast majority of them at one time than to coordinate a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. And so then we can then get feedback from residents about that after they hear the meeting and they get a chance to ask their questions. So I definitely think we need to get that scheduled up before we can actually take a final vote on this.
And I guess I would say I agree. This is an important part of business ownership and operations. We did have a meeting early on in the process as we were even listening to issues or ideas. That was just invitation went out to just businesses. And it was pretty heavily attended. I don't know if that was done through the chamber or directly to the business community, but we did hear from them pretty robustly early on in the process to get their opinion at the beginning before we even started.
Okay, that's awesome. I heard from a lot of businesses that did not get the invitation to that meeting, and they want to have a chance to voice their opinion once. And I said, well, let's see a final draft before you get upset about anything. Let's look and see what's in it, and then we can have that conversation about what's there and how it's going to work going forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And as I understood, Madam Clerk, you said Councilmember Boland was interested.
Yeah, you have Councilmember Boland, Councilmember Crable, and Councilmember Emig.
Oh, Craybill and Emig. Oh, okay. All right. Councilmember Boland, you got the floor.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate all the aspects that you took into account, but I just want to echo what Alderman Matthey said, because I've gotten some pushback and feedback from the business community also. And I just would like to have them have a second chance to have some input. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilmember Boland. Councilmember Craybill and then Emig.
I would also like to thank you for the presentation, echo the comments of Alderpersons Matthey and Boland. I have heard similar concerns from business owners, and I guess I do have some concerns. I think there's a grandfather clause or something in there for current sign owners, but I don't want this to somehow cause a lot of business owners to have increased costs because they have to take down their sign and put something else up. I know that we needed to address the Supreme Court decision and technology, but it seems like the proposal goes beyond that. I agree we should have the Chamber of Commerce involved in that. And then, the 67 survey results, I don't know if that's a good reflection of the community. Part of those were from residents. I think only about 39% were from businesses. And I don't know if we specifically targeted minority business owners to get their thoughts on these, but those are my concerns. And I think, I think just we need to get more input on this.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Emig.
Thank you. I was just wondering about similar issues. I do appreciate the attention to being proportional and uniform, and we certainly did have to update given SCOTUS's ruling. I wondered if the response rates that we received were typical, and I would also urge this group to look very seriously at a phased-in approach, no matter what we end up deciding to do with the signs. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Orly, thank you very much. We don't really need a specific action on this item, but we're going to move to the next item. And I'm going to turn this over to our city manager and for some initial comments before we move to people from House of Levine. And that's consideration and action. This is not just a presentation, it's an action on a resolution authorizing the initiation of a zoning text amendment to the Bloomington Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 44 of the City Code. Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think we're going to go straight to Mr. Levine unless Melissa and or Katie have opening comments.
Okay, so I'll jump into this one again. So this is one that really was done in response to residents and neighborhoods coming out toward the end of the creation of the zoning ordinance that we worked on with the city last year. We're looking specifically at the R3b District Analysis. The direction, because of resident concern with the comprehensive plan and with the zoning ordinance, was that the city take a look at this area, come back after the zoning ordinance had been adopted to specifically look at this area separately. And that's exactly what the city did. So the city adopted it with the direction to go back and look at this area. So we did a couple of things. One, so we're looking at this because during the zoning ordinance update, which was about a year ago or so, 2 years ago, a lot of residents expressed concern about the comprehensive plan, which was done not by us, but previously, the recommendations regarding the neighborhood surrounding the downtown. And the comprehensive plan really sort of entailed this as a high density zoned area, and the zoning did as well, designated a lot of the areas and the emphasis of this area to be pretty high density residential redevelopment. And a lot of residents didn't like the comprehensive plan designation or the zoning designation. So the Plan Commission recommended and City Council approved the zoning ordinance under the condition that we go back for further study to look at the appropriate policy for these neighborhoods from a planning perspective. And then once the policy was examined, then what resulting zoning should put in place to deliver that policy. So it was really going back and looking at the planning component from a while ago and carving out and looking at hard line at zoning for the area. So the City Council adopted the resolution initiating the study back in April 2019. So we did this in direction of City Council, which did it in response to residents' concerns. So go to the next one. So the R3b Zoning District Analysis, the existing policy for this area is there's a preservation area, which is balancing preservation with market demands for demolition and or conversion. And the regeneration area was a comprehensive and collaborative approach to revitalization. And we're talking about also a policy existing in the West Bloomington Neighborhood Plan and the Dimmitz Grove Neighborhood Plan. So these are the two areas that you'll see here. The regeneration area is in pink, and it is on the western area of downtown. And the preservation area that is on the right side or the east side of downtown is that yellowish orange area that you see with the purple asterisk being downtown. This is generally the area we're talking about. Only some of this was R3b, but these are the two areas we're talking about. So the R3b zoning district, as it reads now, which caused some of the concern, was the intent of the R3b resident district is to allow for the areas of highly concentrated multifamily residential development. This district provides for more intense land usage in areas where lower density development is deemed neither appropriate nor economical. And then it goes on further to say that it allows densities of up to 70 dwelling units per acre. So the area in terms of zoning was really targeted for high intensity, concentrated multi-family infill redevelopment. And that was the existing zoning ordinance for this area. Go to the next. The current district statement that we proposed is that the R3b residence district is intended to allow for increased neighborhood density through the development, through the development of small lot, single family housing, townhomes, duplexes, and multifamily. The previous statement said none of the small lot, townhomes, or duplexes.
And John, just to clarify, the first statement was what the purpose statement for the district before we had revised it originally. And
correct.
This purpose statement here is the existing one currently, not
correct.
The one that's being proposed.
Right. So while supportive of the overall historic character of the neighborhood. So we really wanted to make sure that the changed R3b district really got at what is on the ground now, a mixed residential neighborhoods, a lot of single family homes, a lot of duplexes, a lot of historic character. The old intent for the district had none of that. The district allows for a maximum of 70 dwelling units per acre that may be applied in areas best suited for such intense development. So. Go ahead and change the slide. So this is what you see in red here is the R3b District Study area. So these are all the parcels that are zoned R3b multifamily residence district in the city's zoning map right now. These are the properties that we took a look at. This is the R3b district that we were charged with examining, but you can see how they surround the downtown, not completely, but in pockets both to the east and to the west, with a couple of more isolated areas a little bit to the north of the core downtown area. So again, we held workshops in both the different neighborhoods, one for the regeneration area workshop, one for the preservation area workshop. I think maybe the biggest differentiation between these two areas is the preservation area workshop represents the neighborhood on the east side of the downtown. More historic, I guess, slightly doesn't suffer as much from some deferred maintenance, a little bit more robust awareness and maintenance of the history of the development of those areas over time. Whereas the regeneration area workshop for the west side of the downtown neighborhood had seen historically more conversions of single family homes into duplexes or multifamily through sort of chopping up the houses internally to accommodate multifamily purposes and historically single family structures. So a little bit more internal utilization of housing stock, not the way it was developed, intended to be used. But we met with the neighbors in both of those neighborhoods. The policy direction that we heard and that we think was most important was to create a zoning district that promotes the following: preservation and viability of the existing housing stock. The people that lived here love living here. They love the small homes. They love the mix of big homes and small homes. They love the fact that there's some single family attached and duplexes mixed in with single family. They like that eclectic mix of residential product type. They didn't view that as a open table for people to come in and just do broad scale intense multifamily development. So the policy was to preserve the viability of existing housing stock, the preservation of existing affordable and missing middle options while limiting illegal conversions or conversions that are too dense, the preservation of the neighborhood's overall character and feel as a mixed residential neighborhood, and to accommodate appropriate infill development where it was appropriate and in some cases needed, as opposed to inappropriate development available everywhere. So a much more responsive approach. So if you take a look, we took those R3b and we broke them down into these district recommendations. An RD, downtown residence district, that's the brighter pink colors that you see on both sides. R2 mixed residential district up on the north to the east of the downtown, and the D2 downtown transition district, that larger parcel up there on West Mulberry Street at the sort of the northern, just western tip of the downtown. But breaking this R3b into these three districts, not just treating these all the same under R3b. So the existing R3b district promotes high concentrated multifamily, deems lower density development as neither appropriate nor economical. That's what it says now, which was sort of not appropriate, and the residents didn't like it. So again, deemed it as lower density development is neither appropriate nor economical. Encourages multifamily dwellings in mid-rise structures for those persons desiring to live in such an environment, and allows residential densities up to 70 dwelling units per acre. So that was the existing. Our recommendations for the RT neighborhood district is to preserve, I'm going to delete that. Okay. Preserve a mixture of housing types and scales, including large and small lot, single family, detached, as well as homes as a low density multifamily. Prioritize extending economic life of existing structures through the conversion to multifamily or office uses in certain areas and under certain conditions. Encourage new development and redevelopment in the district shall be supportive of the overall historic character. So it can't just come in and wipe things out, but has to do so in a more sensitive manner. and allows densities of up to 43 dwelling units per acre with a minimum lot area of 1,000. So before it was 70 units per acre with a minimum lot area of only 622 feet. So you can see here, it wasn't all high density, high concentration, devaluing historic structures and devaluing low density. We changed it to a much more responsive, historically sensitive, mixed residential approach, lowering the intense development potential of multifamily. And go to the next slide. So the R3b recommendations were minimum lot frontage of 60 feet, minimum lot area of 5,500, lot coverage of 80%, front yard setbacks of 20, max building height in 6 stories, minimum parkings were 2 spaces per unit, design guidelines there were none, multifamily and office conversions were permitted by right with no oversight. That's what it is right now. So you can see here, you could cover 80% of your lot with a building. Buildings could go 6 stories high, but there's nothing over there that's 6 stories high. It's pretty out of context. And if you wanted to put in multifamily or convert something to office, there were no regulations or guidelines to ensure that those conversions were being done sensitive to the existing character of the neighborhood. So what we did was, in the minimum lot frontage of 60 feet, a lot of the properties there don't have a minimum lot of 60 feet. So a lot were non-conforming. And there were a lot of other problems as well, like the front setbacks. Sometimes you didn't have the 20 feet. So there are a lot of problems with the existing, and that's on the left side of your screen. What we recommended was 43 dwelling units per acre max compared to the 70. So not half, but considerably less. The minimum lot frontage was determined by the average for that block because it varied block by block by block. And we didn't want to make anything not fit the character. The minimum lot area per block was done on a block average. The lot coverage was 45%. So before the max lot coverage was 80%, we were literally regulating open space out of this neighborhood on a lot by lot basis. Front yard setbacks, some of the buildings that exist out there, in fact, a lot of them don't maintain 20 feet as required. So front setbacks as well are done on a block average. So new development would match the existing character. Max building height was 4 stories, so not 6 stories. And the minimum parking was 1 space per unit, and it had to be in the rear of the structure. Previously, there had to be 2 spaces per unit. And that just didn't work for some of how the adaptive reuse was taking place. We created design guidelines for architectural guidelines, required material for new construction. So there were some guidelines for new investment that would not allow for the erosion of the character of the neighborhood. And multifamily and office conversions were permitted as a conditional use. So an applicant could not do conversion of single family as of right. They would have to come in and seek approval from the city to show that what they were doing was sensitive to and appropriate for the neighborhood and get permitted for it. So these are some of the changes we made to the district as well. So again, you thought signs was a lot to take in. There's a lot of detail here, but the bottom line is, I think matter of factly, the district before, both in terms of policy and regulations, it sort of saw the mixed residential lower density development in these neighborhoods as a setting of the table for more intense development across the neighborhoods, with a little regard to the character and history of the existing neighborhoods and mix of residential product. The new code right sizes regulations by making it the average of the blocks, so it's block by block specific, therefore ensuring that new development is compatible and in character with the existing, but still allowing for reinvestment, still allows for conversion, but it has to be done and meet the guidelines and conditions, and permitting has to be done by the city. And we've removed the ability to, as of right, develop something up to 70 units per acre, 6 stories tall in the neighborhood on relatively small lots, and increase the size of lot required by the minimum and reduce it to 43 park or dwelling units per acre and only 4 stories in height. And you've got some 3-story structures out there now. So it is now what we're recommending is a mixed residential development that will encourage and accommodate investment, but safeguard the character and the maintaining of the existing residential neighborhoods you see there today. And that was what was most important. So that's the balance we struck that we think achieves both of those objectives. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to any questions the council has.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments by members of the council? We're going to start our time for council questions at this point.
Mayor, we have Councilmember Matthey and Painter.
Okay, in that order, Councilmember Matthey and Councilmember Painter. I'm kind of scoping the video view. So thank you, Madam Clerk.
Can we take the presentation view off so I can see faces? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Whoever can. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you. That's better. Now I can see who's talking.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it, especially since my house is one of the properties identified in this presentation. I think that you really, in terms of the scope of what we were trying to do, you really hit the nail on the head. And trying to preserve the feel of the character. There are a lot of people who have been moving into the area and buying some of these older houses and spending a lot of money to preserve and maintain and care for a lot of these properties. And that's why some folks took objection to the saying that, lower density was not encouraged in this area. And I think that from my perspective and from talking to residents of the Dimmitz Grove area, which is of course the east side, I think that you've actually achieved almost all of the goals that we had. We had some scenarios where we did have properties that were torn down and some, fairly ugly multi-family high density properties put in, especially in the south part of Dimmitz Grove, and that people were really unhappy about. So I really think that you have achieved what we wanted. However, people were caught off guard by the fact that this was a presentation and then an adoption tonight. And so I'm going to actually make a motion to table the adoption of this until our second meeting of October, to give residents in the area some time to give feedback on this, because like I said, a lot of people were just caught off guard that this was coming back as here's our final recommendation. And oh, by the way, we're actually going to adopt this or vote on this tonight. They just want time to read it, study it, maybe ask some more questions along the way. But I think that you guys did a great job here overall.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Matthey. Is there a second to Councilmember Matthey's motion? Someone can wave their hand.
I'll second.
I saw several. I saw Councilmember Emick. I see. Okay. At this point, is there discussion on the motion by Councilmember Matthey to postpone this until our October meeting?
Mayor, you do have Councilmember Painter who would like to speak.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Johnny. I was looking around and I did not see your hand up. But thank you, Madam Clerk, for letting me know. Councilmember Painter, go ahead.
Well, thank you. And I would like to echo what Jamie said. I just wanted to second what he was saying, because I have heard from members of the Dimmitz Grove neighborhood in particular that have more questions, and they just want to have a few things answered. And I think it's totally in order to table this to a time certain so they can have their concerns addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Painter. So we have a motion and a second to a time certain. Any other discussions? Excuse me. Oh, Mr. Gleason, you wanted to say something.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on what is occurring tonight. The resolution tonight is to initiate the public hearing process.
Yeah.
It would then go back to the Planning Commission, then go back to Council for final adoption. There is outreach. What's scheduled for the Planning Commission meeting, I believe, is October 28th.
Okay. Just to clarify then, Councilmember Matthey, did you mean for your motion then to postpone the entirety of this until October? Or
no, I apologize then if I read it as we were actually adopting this tonight. And if that's not what we're doing, if we're sending this for public hearing and more feedback at Planning Commission, then I apologize. I read that incorrectly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The action is not to adopt. The action is to send it for community discussion at a public hearing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So you're withdrawing your motion. Is that correct?
I will withdraw the motion. I did not read that.
Seconder, okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think it was Councilmember Emick. I think both of you did try to second it, but at this point, then I'm going to turn to Councilmember Matthey. since you made the initial motion, would you like to make a motion then for us to proceed with this as presented, which would begin the process of public interaction?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve as presented.
Okay, Councilmember
And
Enoch,
I will second it.
you will second that. Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, we are all smoking. Okay. At
Getting
this
there.
point, if there's not any other comments, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Mathy,
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Milawambwe,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Painter,
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Yes.
Councilmember Black,
Yes.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion carries. We appreciate that. And thank you to our staff, City Manager and House Levine, for all the work you put into this. We very much appreciate that. And we look forward to continued public input and final resolution of this. At this point, we're going to move on to consideration and action on the local coronavirus urgent remediation cure support program. And that's a certification on an ordinance pertaining to the local cure program as requested by the Finance Department. We have we'll all realize this, an extraordinarily brief presentation by Mr. Gleason, 3 minutes, and an extraordinarily brief discussion of 3 minutes by the City Council. Mr. Gleason, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My quick comments are this. This is before Council tonight as an ordinance to be adopted at the recommendation of the Illinois Municipal League. And what this is, the CURE application is to be reimbursed for some of the COVID-related impacts. We're allocated up to $3.1 million. And the final certification for the period of March 1st to December 31st will come back to Council for that final approval before it's submitted. Also of note, we actually started tracking and created a line item for COVID-related expenses before the state was shut down. So that week prior to, I believe, March 17th, this is something that we set in motion as city staff. There is one thing I'm going to toss it across the dais to City Clerk Leslie Yoakum to clarify something that was sent later in an email that was not in the packet. Leslie?
Thank you, City Manager Gleason. An email went out earlier today, and it was the attachment in the packet, the City of Bloomington Local Cure Certification. It was included in the packet incomplete. There are, let's see, on page 7 of that certificate, there's 3 questions that were answered. The answer to question 1 was yes, and the answer to questions 2 and 3 were no. Those were forwarded to Council earlier today, and that certificate is referenced in the ordinance. So just wanted to draw that to your attention. If anyone was looking at it for the packet as a whole, it was on page 167 of the packet. So just wanted to clarify before you move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Gleason, anything else? Okay, at this point then, is there, could I have a motion and a second, and then we can, start our 3-minute discussion or so on the proposed certification ordinance that it be approved. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Black. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Mathy, I'm not sure who else that was, but I recognize his voice. Discussion on this item. Any comments? Okay.
Mary,
I'm sorry.
Nope, there was one person, but it looks like they put their hand down.
Okay. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll then? Thank you.
Councilmember Mathy,
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Milawambwe,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Painter,
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Yes.
Councilmember Black,
Yes.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Motion carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're going to move to item 9D, consideration and action on an ordinance amending Chapter 7 of the Bloomington City Code to implement updated video gaming licensure requirements within the city as requested by the Clerk's Department. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to our City Manager, and then I guess Madam Clerk, a brief presentation, 5 minutes, and a 5-minute council discussion or so. Mr. Gleason, we'll start with you.
All right, he told me just to go right ahead. So
Okay,
we'll jump right in. So basically the ordinance change that, or city code change that we're proposing, there's 3 different changes. There's the video gaming license. Currently, there's a 60-day cessation period. So a business, for a variety of reasons, can cease operations, and their video gaming license is put on hold. They have to receive an approval from the city prior to that cessation, and then the time clock starts running. We do a similar thing with liquor license. However, the cessation timeline is 180 days. And as you all know, the liquor license for most all video gaming is a requirement for having a video gaming license. So it's our recommendation that we align the video gaming license, and amend the 60 days to allow 180 days cessation. One of the things I would like to point out is that the liquor license also allows for an additional request of another 180-day period. We're not recommending that we do that, but we are asking that we amend the code, which would allow for a 180-day cessation period for video gaming, aligning it with the liquor license code. The second change is the application process, and it's one of the things that are kind of either you take advantage, I guess, of the momentum that comes out of COVID, and there are some little bonuses, one of which is being able to do a lot of business electronically. And we have been trying to widespread that across all of our applications. And one of them is video gaming. So in our code right now, we require that a paper floor plan be attached to any applications that are received. They also have to submit it already in an electronic format, but it requires that a paper floor plan be submitted at a minimum of an 11 by 17 size. So what we're asking here is to amend the code so that the paper floor plan is no longer required, but that it would be made available upon request by the city. And again, that electronic version still comes and is computer generated, drawn to scale, et cetera. So just trying to streamline our processes. And then the last one, so council had approved a lower video gaming terminal fee for fraternal organizations and veteran organizations. And one of the things that we didn't think exactly through at that time was what requirements that we would require of the organizations coming forward, basically just documentation to verify that they qualify for that reduced rate. We also had some other things with truck stops with the amount of fuel that they have to sell and the size that they have to be to maintain their status. So all we're doing here is just asking that we amend the code to require particular documentation so that we can validate that as businesses come forward underneath these different types of license, that we can get the information that we need to make sure that they're well suited. And if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Just to, since you're on the front lines of all this, do you perceive any particular downside to any of this or concerns from your vantage point?
No, I don't. Again, so the second change with the not requiring paper, just streamlining the process. So I think that's a great one. And we still can make that request to have a paper copy if needed. It's really something that when we handle retention of documents and whatnot in my department, the eliminating paper just helps streamline everything across the board. So that's a good one. And then the verification of documents, definitely needing that. And to me, aligning video gaming with liquor, it makes one date that my office is managing and really will help the businesses as well.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. At this point, before we begin a discussion, is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
We do have, sorry to interrupt, Mayor, Council Member Painter with her hand up.
Okay, but before we go do, I'm going to see if there's a motion because we can continue the discussion. Is there a motion?
I think that's what she'd like to do.
She wants to make the motion.
Sorry, Madam Council Member Painter.
Yes, that's why I had my hand up. Thank you, Leslie, for your work on this. I think all of these changes make sense. And I'm glad that it will streamline things and make things easier for you as well. So good work, thank you. And I would like to move to approve this as presented.
Thank you, Councilmember Peter. Thank you, sorry.
Second.
Second by, was that?
Crable.
Councilmember Crable. Okay, I didn't quite recognize it. Okay, any further discussion? I don't see any. Madam Clerk, go ahead and call the roll, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthey,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Milawambwe,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Painter,
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Yes.
Councilmember Black,
Yes.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, and thank you, everyone.
Thank
We
you.
move on to item 9E, consideration and action on an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the Bloomington City Code to create a public arts commission as requested by the Administration Department. And we have a very brief presentation and a very brief council discussion. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason. Tim.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Last week, we heard a presentation from Deputy City Manager Tyus. It was a culmination of a year and a half's worth of work for him. I stepped into this position a little bit more than 2 years ago, and this is something that was a priority for many in the community, and I will say specifically in the downtown area. Alderman Matthey was someone that I heard from, as well as other council members. Former Alderwoman Howman, the Eatons, and the Tiltons, and we think that we're ready to bring this across the finish line. The presentation last week, there's no deviation to the presentation last week. This would be a 7-member board that's advisory, and there are 3 members from the public, and this would be for 2-year appointments. There was some conversation last week about trying to represent a certain type of art for a certain part of the community. And one thing to be very clear on the 7-person advisory commission, they will take public input. So if there is a drive in a certain part of the community and what that could or should look like, that's something that the process is very much about public input. And then once it hits that threshold of the commission bringing that to the council for final approval, because the final approval does lie with this council, there's also additional public input that can be made to offer some, not guidance, but some comments related to the type of art that would be in front of council. Something else that we talked about was the funding component. I think that there is a priority to allocate money every year, one through private donations, but also a city funding component. There is some it is unclear the full impacts that COVID might have on us. So rather than capture a specific area in what's before you tonight, we just acknowledge the fact that this will be a part of the budget process every single year. And the desire is to actually fund and allocate money towards this public art program for the city. I'll take any additional questions or comments. Deputy City Manager Tyus is on the line as well and stand ready to respond.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Gleason. We appreciate all your hard work. I'm going to start out with asking if there is a motion on this and then begin the discussion. Is there a motion on this?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Yeah, if you'd like.
Councilmember Black, go ahead.
Well, my motion will be that we table this till a date uncertain, pending the conversation that we're about to have.
So the motion and the conversation to be tabled?
Yeah, my motion is that we table this item to a date uncertain,
Okay.
and then for items to be brought back based on this conversation.
I see. Okay. Is there a second to Councilmember Black's motion?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Bolin. I see her hand in the air. Any discussion on the motion to table this to a time uncertain? Councilmember Black, could you just clarify, just for the record briefly, why?
Yeah. So it's always interesting to me how we can spend millions of dollars on water infrastructure and nobody says anything. But when we talk about an arts commission, the public feedback is robust, which is good. And so since last week's conversation, I think there's been a lot of interest in this topic. And some things I'd be interested in seeing some verbiage about, just about kind of the membership is there a way that we could do something like temporary ex officio members to ensure that people who are people in the neighborhood can weigh in as part of the process on this type of public art. I know that when we did the West Market Street mural, there was a lot of concern from some people. What's going to go on this wall? I got to drive past it every day, and that person may not be represented, chosen for the commission. So that might be a solution. I've heard other pieces of maybe we do like a public hearing, before anything comes before council, that they have to conduct a public hearing very similar to what the Zoning Board of Appeals would do, same public notification process. And I know this is a year and a half of work here, and Billy and Tim have done just a phenomenal job. Very important conversation. So I figure, a little bit more time to get this ironed out would be good for the community.
Thank you very much. Any further comments on the motion before I ask for a vote? Councilmember Matthew.
Yeah, why a date uncertain? Can't we put a number on the calendar? Because I would just like to see this keep moving forward. I don't like dates uncertain and have something just fall into a nebulous gray area again. I mean, can we pick a date 6 weeks out or something in that nature? But as just anything other than
let's do it before October 26th. I will amend my motion.
So you do want to be around for the discussion? I thought
yes, I'll be around for that.
Just move on. Okay.
Absolutely not. And I may have somebody that wants to be on this commission. So
okay.
The record show.
That's totally out of order right now, but we appreciate that. So is the seconder of the motion okay with the amendment to say from date uncertain to date certain, October 26th?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Boland. At this point, Madam Clerk, then, unless there's somebody I'm missing.
Mayor, you do have Councilmember Carrillo with her hand up.
Jen?
And me.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Carrillo? Jen, did you have?
Yeah, I just want to second what Scott mentioned. Those are two things that I'd like to see be brought back as part of this ordinance. And perhaps we just get a couple of options to look at. But certainly I think both the ex officio members as well as a public hearing can help address some of the issues that I raised last time around.
Thank you, Councilmember Carrillo. At this point then, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Boland, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think I might have started part of this conversation because I would like to see a separate robust discussion about the funding and make it very clear the process of that we would go through for the funding. I'm not against the this particular ordinance, but it specifically says for the creation of a public arts commission. I know we discussed funding, but that's not the title of this particular ordinance. Does that make sense? I would like to have a separate ordinance for funding from this formation of a commission.
Well, I'm not 100% sure because the motion that we have on the floor is to approve as presented, but we're not really, well, not approved.
No, it's a table.
Consider this to table it to October 26th. So I don't think there's a motion that's in order right now, except.
No. I'm not making a motion. I'm just explaining why I support what Scott is saying for tabling.
Okay.
But my concern is not the formation of the commission. My concern is to have a separate ordinance for the funding.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay.
That makes, I apologize.
And Mayor, just so you're aware, you have Councilmember Painter with her hand up, and City Manager Gleason would also like to.
Councilmember Painter, in that order, City Manager, excuse me, Councilmember Painter and then City Manager Gleason.
I agree. I would like to see this tabled. I think some details still need to be hammered out. You know, for example, I think that it's great that people from the neighborhoods get to weigh in, but I think rather than having 2 or 3 people from whatever neighborhood is affected, they need to have a public hearing. So it's very transparent and everyone that wants to come can come and weigh in on that sort of thing. And I also think that the funding at this point in time needs to be discussed more in detail, because I know that some people are quite upset during this time of COVID that we're even discussing this. And I think that it needs to be handled quite delicately. And, you know, I'm all for public arts, and I think that this is a great idea, but I think that there are a lot of details that still need to be discussed. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Painter. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason. Mr. Gleason wanted to make a comment, but before I do, just to make it clear, regardless of COVID, this is always for the record and for public consumption. There's always a separate process for public funding through the regular budgetary process from something we might pursue. And I would also say, because I've received some of the points that Councilmember Painter and some others have suggested, that we shouldn't even be considering this. We don't want to hunker down into a corner in a fetal position just because COVID is happening. That doesn't mean we're allocating any money, but we need to move forward with things like this so we can begin to think about that. Because again, we probably all receive similar kinds of feedback. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason. Mr. Gleason, you had some comments.
I do. I think one, I'm going to ask for clarity of what is being asked of the staff. Alderman Black's comments about a public hearing, and I think that was supported by Alderwoman Carrillo. That's something that could be added to the document tonight through amendment, if that's what you so choose. The conversation or the wording on the funding, it was to give some latitude. It was to, one, stress the value that this council places on public art, but also not to lock you into a specific funding area. And if there is more, something different that needs to be added to this before we bring it back to council, if this was to wait till October 26th, that's fine. But I guess I would like some clarity on what's actually being asked of staff in the next document, if it's not going to be amended and passed tonight.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Gleason. I'm going to go ahead and go to the, even though we haven't voted on this yet, to the maker of the motion and the seconder, Councilmember Black.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Tim. You're right. I should be clearer. I'm looking, as opposed to trying to throw an amendment on the floor that isn't worded in the correct way, was more about making sure that we can take this conversation, as you're starting to see some folks that want to see a public hearing, at least start there, get the wording right so that the ordinance is presented clean. So we're not trying to amend it and not put the right verbiage in there. Because like I said, I would envision it being very similar to like a ZBA process. And then as for like ex officios, there's a couple of questions that might come out of that. So maybe it's an option, option A, option B, and then we can pick from those. It would be very difficult for us to amend that properly during a live session. And since this isn't as urgent, you got it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any follow through on that before I ask for a vote on the motion and second?
Councilmember Bolin would like to speak.
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, would you say?
I was just saying Councilmember Bolin has her hand up.
That I did see. Thank you. Councilmember Bolin.
Yes, I just want to make it clear that I'm very happy with the process of the commission, setting up the commission and vetting and all that. So that part of the ordinance that's presented here is fine with me. I understand that it's an open meeting, there will be public comment, opportunity for people to voice their opinion, regardless of the ward they're in. It doesn't really matter to me. But I just would like that funding component in Part D clarified rather than leaving it flexible for variable interpretation. I would just like, I want to get rid of the flexibility in a sense, like itemize that it can, that we're going to have, look for private funding. We're going to, reach out to former Alderwoman Howman. She set up an account. How is she going to manage that? How will that fit into a public-private conversation? Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me, Councilmember Boland. Anybody want to clarify what Councilmember Boland has suggested? Any concerns? Okay. So, I'm sorry, Councilmember Painter. I see. She's good. Look at that hand waving.
No, I just wanted to clarify about what Councilmember Howman had done in the past. She set up a donor advised fund with the Illinois Prairie Community Foundation, and it was specifically to fund public art. And there's money there to be used for this. And I can tell you that if a lot of people are really enthusiastic about this and they donate to this 501c3, which is tax deductible, if you get up to $20,000, you can open up an endowment, which will kick off grants, all the time for public art. So, as an example, I know someone who set up a donor advised fund in Atlanta, Illinois, to plant tulips all over Atlanta, and everybody loved it so much that a lot of people donated money, and now they have an account with the community foundation called Endow Atlanta, and they can use that money for all kinds of beautification in the town of Atlanta. So that's what I would like to see encouraged mostly, and tap into these public-private partnerships. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
You have Councilmember Carrillo.
Carrillo.
Thank you. I know we are talking about this as part of one motion that is basically giving us more time to hammer out the details. I do think that when we come back to look at what we're going to actually pass, then these two issues should be treated separately and should be decoupled, because I think that there are those who feel strongly about how the commission is put together and who makes up the commission, and what the public hearing process is, but don't want to see that flexibility in terms of the funding go away, and actually want to see the city play a role in the funding. And then there are folks who really care about the funding piece and are less interested in what the makeup of the commission is. So I guess that's just, from my perspective, that's what I'm hearing in this conversation. And so I think, as a note to staff, I think you will make our lives easier if you bring those options back to us in a way that we can vote individually on each of those pieces.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilmember Carrillo. Those are very good points. At this juncture, though, we're voting on a specific motion that's been made, and we'll deal with the rest of this in a time certain. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yeah, and I was just going to clarify. So we're voting to table this item so that it be brought back by October 26th.
That's correct.
Councilmember Mathy.
Yes.
Councilmember Boland.
Yes.
Councilmember Milawambwe.
Yes.
Councilmember Emig.
Yes.
Councilmember Painter.
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Yes.
Councilmember Black.
Yes.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Thank you so much to staff and others. We'll move on to next, the item 9, last item on the regular agenda, 9F. There's no vote on this. There's a brief presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gleason in a second, and then a brief council discussion. Mr. Gleason, go ahead.
Very brief. There is nothing new to be considered under the emergency ordinance.
Well, that was really brief. Given that really brief presentation, is there a really brief council discussion?
Councilmember Black has his hand up.
You do? Oh, okay.
You're supposed to so shocked.
Yeah, I'm seeing you there, dude. I didn't see your hand, but go ahead, Councilmember Black. Thanks.
Yeah. So, thank you, Tim. One of the things that I'm starting to hear more is the concern about the cold weather, and who knows if we're going to be able to do more indoor dining, or what the world's going to look like. So one thing to keep on the radar is how will the city allow for outdoor dining in the winter? And if that means more permanent tents and structures, or if we need to make some changes to how we set that policy up, those allowances, those permits. We should have that conversation before it's cold, because that's quickly approaching.
Well, I think it's just the freeze your ass off if you decide it amendment. But Mr. Gleason, go ahead.
Actually, Alderman Black, that's on our radar. I'm not so sure that the emergency ordinance doesn't allow for a tent with heaters already, but we're making sure. Secondly, what are the impacts for snow removal? So if we've got these outdoor dining, it's probably going to translate to smaller plow trucks making smaller runs. Instead of getting the larger truck, with the momentum from one end to the other, we're just going to have to adapt, and definitely something we're working on.
Totally. And I've seen that from the team a lot. And I can already hear some people saying, who's going to go dine outdoors in the winter? Well, if we want to support our local businesses, we want to make sure that we allow them to be able to do that. So thanks, Tim.
Yeah. So as long as we've got heaters out there, maybe it isn't the freeze your ass off ordinance. So cool. Thank you, everyone. We're going to go to the finance director's report. I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Gleason first. I don't know if you had your preparatory remarks before Mr. Rathman starts. Tim?
I do. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Finance Director Rathman has a shorter discussion this evening, but we continue to trend well compared to other Illinois communities. And that is not suggesting that COVID has not had a negative financial impact to us, because it has. But we're beating our projections. The community really is coming out and supporting the community itself. So with that said, Scott, I see you. Handing this over to you.
Thank you, City Manager Gleason. Good evening, Council and Mayor. August, it's 4 months into the fiscal year. Typically, we're not getting a lot of visibility on how the year is going, but for this year, every single month that goes by, we anxiously await the revenues that post, and it gives us more visibility on the COVID impact to our revenues. So, we have these delays in our revenues, especially with sales tax, a 2-month delay. But right now, we've had visibility on 2 full months of quarantine and at least 1 month on our local taxes post-quarantine, to kind of give us an idea of how we're trending versus the projection that we went over in July. So before I get into August, I just wanted to take a real quick moment and recap the July projection. That was amended from the April projection, where we'd gone through a model where we took the COVID impact and we broke it down into quarantine months, and then I call it a recessionary tail for the rest of the year. So we went through all the revenues, came up with assumptions for reductions or impacts on those revenues, and then took an inflationary impact for the remainder of the year, 8.5%, modeled out 3 scenarios, May, June, July lift dates. So we essentially ended up with 2 months of quarantine. And in July, we had our first visibility on sales tax. So we amended our projection for sales taxes. As an example, we had projected in April that home rule and state sales tax would have a 50% reduction for quarantine months. The home rule came down 31%, had a 31%, and state was 23%. So we amended our projection in July, went through all the categories once again. And at that time, using those assumptions, we'd come up with an $8.5 million impact to the city and the city's general fund. We had $3.8 $8 million in identified savings. So we were looking at basically a $4.7 million use of reserves at that time, which with what we were going to finish fiscal year 20, we were projecting, all things being held equal, that we'd end 21, really looking out there with 19 plus million in reserves, which coincides with the GFOA recommendation. So at this point in time, we're actually trending a little bit better in most of our categories compared to our projection. So we're cautiously optimistic. Of course, we don't know what the lingering impact might be, you know, if this goes on into 2022. But for right now, with what we're seeing, 21, when we update the projection, which we're looking to do next month, we should be looking at a better number than that $4.7 million impact. So we can bring up the presentation, please. And next slide, please. This will be the key exhibit going forward the next few months. We've added a column here off to the right that shows the reduction or the impact on our monthly budget for these particular categories. So I'm hopeful that this will give some visibility on the most recent month we've recorded for the month we're reviewing. And the reason I'm making that comment is we're reviewing August right now. Now we've had some revenues post for September, but to keep things consistent, you know, we're just, for this exhibit, we're going to show through the month that we've closed. So as an example, I'm going to look at home rule sales tax. So for the month of August, I mean, the last month that we had budgeted, we had a 26.36 impact under budget for that month. Now we had projected utilizing the July numbers, 31%. So we're doing a little bit better against our projection. State sales tax, 13.83% reduction in the most recent month reported. Well, we had projected 23%. Income tax is kind of an anomaly. We had that push out for the due date from April to July, and that pushed some revenues out into fiscal year 21. Now we incorporated that into our projection in July, so it's going to skew our variances. So I just wanted to comment on that briefly. So the 125%, you know, over budget for that month, that was when we got the revenues from the state related to the July 15th tax returns. Local motor fuel tax. Now there's one that's trending a little under. It's into the recessionary tail because we get those numbers monthly. There's no delay like we do with this sales tax. So with our recessionary tail estimate of 8.5%, local motor fuel tax is dragging a little bit behind that at the 14.7%. Kind of the same message with food and beverage. It's another local tax that, you know, we review and get monthly. We projected 8.5% using our recessionary. It's at 12.7. There's a lot of creativity out there in the city. So, you know, we're looking to increase in that category every month. But that's one of the ones, you know, we'll have to be watching and doing everything we can here at the city to aid our local businesses. Replacement tax, it's another one of those income tax categories. I was telling the city manager and the deputy city manager that I keep expecting for income tax and replacement tax to start trailing off. I'm not sure if people are submitting income taxes early this year, but it continues to do well for us. Oh, I skipped over one, but I'll circle back to it, the local use. And then I wanted to focus on hotel motel. This is one where we actually increased the reduction when we did our July revision. So at that time, we had assumed that it was just going to be a recessionary tail. We saw the impacts that were occurring in hotel motel. So we reviewed revised the projection to 50%. And for the last month, it came in 50% under our budget. So that one's hitting right at our projection. I wanted to circle back and talk about local use tax. If you look into the middle of the screen, you can see year-to-date variance, $217,000 better than budget year-to-date. And as a reminder, local use tax is where we're capturing our internet sales tax. That has gone up every month. So folks are shopping online. I've commented on that every month. I wanted to comment again that as of January 1st, online retailers that meet certain limits are required to start collecting the local portion of sales of their internet sales, retail sales tax. We're going to have a little bit of an accounting issue to explain because some of those taxes will actually roll up into a home rule at that point in time. So we'll have to revise our budgets, but that's going to be a positive impact for us. So again, the message at this time is that compared to our projection that we prepared in July, where we had a $4.7 million estimated impact, and again, that's using a lot of assumptions, we are trending better than that in revenues now. Next slide, please. Not going to spend a lot of time on this exhibit this evening. I just want to point out that under the projection budget adjustments column, if you go all the way down to the bottom, that's the $4.7 million projected impact that we came up with in July. The reason that the column right to its right is at 5.486 million is due to the use of fund balance. If you go back up to the top in the top left corner of the 786,000, that's a use of fund balance related to public safety pensions, and that's coming out of restricted fund balance reserves. So in a way that's accounted for aside from the COVID impact. So that's why those two numbers differ. So again, revenues trending better, expenses are trending under. Our vacancy savings is coming in way under year to date. I've mentioned this several times in the past, there's a good expense control culture in the city. We in the finance department communicate monthly with all the department heads, always emphasizing, to be prudent this year and better to wait and see. And it's, a needs versus wants scenario for the city, and everyone is really rising to the occasion. Next slide, please. Enterprise funds. Typically, I just focus on the revenue trend. So revenue trend, charges for services, annualized trend target, the line right below us through August is 33%. That's essentially 4 months out of 12. We're 33% of the way through the year. Enterprise fund revenues should track pretty closely just to the trend. And you can see right across the board, water, sewer, storm, solid waste, all right on trend. What I really wanted to highlight tonight was golf. Golf is at 54% of trend. And golf is seasonal, so 54 compared to 33 doesn't really provide an apples to apples. So if you look down, you see FY 2020, golf was at 48% of trend through August in 20. So people are anxious apparently to get out, enjoy themselves, and utilize the golf courses here in the city. So that was really a positive thing to see with the financials as of the end of August. So to kind of finalize, I wanted to comment, we've gotten our preliminary EAV numbers, equalized assessed value from the county. We're up compared to the preliminary last year, just slightly, 1.5 million out of 1.9 billion, but at least it's up, and we'll take that as of now. So again, final summary, trending better than projection. We'll look to update that projection next month. We'll have 1 more month of COVID impact to utilize for that, and potentially have a longer presentation with an updated projection next month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to turn to our city manager, Mr. Gleason.
And we're moving on to city manager comments, or were there?
No, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yeah, city manager comments. I think we're done with finance.
Understood. Just moving, and I need to keep up. If you would, Craig, throw up the slides, please. Farmers Market, 7:30 to noon downtown. Next slide. I think this one's going to, yep, the October activities. And as a quick aside, We're still discussing internally what the possibilities are for trick-or-treating. Know that traditional trick-or-treating is not going to occur, but do we still have other opportunities like a trunk and treat? Some things that other communities are considering we're looking at as well. But this right here is the October activities downtown. Next slide. Census 2020. It's been extended through October 31st. So, please take the opportunity. This is more so me talking to the community to take advantage of this, reach out to friends and family, neighbors, while we are doing very good in this community. And I heard that firsthand. I served on a ICMA panel discussion on the census, and we are doing very well compared to many other communities around the United States. Next slide. And the Small Business Assistance Grant Program, please reach out if you've got any questions or even considering this. Let us help you understand the process and possibly get some funding to recoup some of the losses. I believe that's the last slide. Just a real quickie, O'Neill Pool, it's been demoed. We're cleaning that side up. The pantograph covered that very well for us. And then also this past weekend, nice update on the library expansion discussion. And that's something that will work its way in front of council at some point in the near future. With that, that's all I've got, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gleason. Appreciate that, Tim, and your great assistant, Mr. Tyus. At this point, the only things I wanted to do was to thank Mr. Gleason and others for exploring options, because I've had lots of questions about Halloween and what the contours of that might look like. So thank you again for your work on that. I do want to thank outgoing Convention and Visitors Bureau Chair Carlo Robustelli for all his work there. He's also been obviously on the county board. We're sad to see him go and leave our community, but thank you for your work. I also want to thank, and he has a few more meetings for me to needle him on, is Councilmember Black. We came on the council and the mayorship at the same time 7.5 years ago. I had very little gray hair. You had some. Oh, I guess you still do. I'm sorry. And so we're very appreciative of all your work, and also thanking you for your work on the CVB and many other organizations. But we do have a date to a time certain, October 26th, to continue to harass you. So thank you for that. I'm going to see if we have any aldermanic comments. Anyone from any aldermen or women?
Mayor, you have Councilmember Bolin, Councilmember Matthey, and Councilmember Crable.
Okay, I'm going to start with Councilmember Matthey because he's Ward 1, and then it was Crable and Bolin. So we'll do Matthey, Bolin, Crable in order. Thank you. Jamie.
Yeah. I just was thinking that for Halloween, what we could really do is we could get everybody the like a little diagram to build catapults, and we can just launch the candy at the kids as they walk by on the sidewalk. So, this is the guy who owns the game store coming out in me there, but we're socially distanced, right? So
it's socially distancing. Yeah. That's right. And we could probably wipe all the candy off or flush it out depending on what kind it is, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilmember. Next, we move to Councilmember Bolin and then Crable.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Alderman Black said about outdoor dining. It seemed to be very successful with the curbside. So if we're having trouble with putting up tents and heaters and snow, I think that people are really good about going to that curbside. They don't want to cook at home. They want to get some food. And the other thing I'd like to talk about is please reach out to your physician and ask them about getting your flu shot. There's some talk about maybe delaying getting the flu shot because it doesn't last. It only lasts for an X amount of time. But certainly nobody wants to have COVID and flu at the same time. So just reach out to your doctor and get his advice and follow it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bolin. I think that's probably unanimous without even taking a vote. Councilmember Craven.
Just briefly, I'm having another town hall this Wednesday, September 30th at 6 p.m. You can check my Facebook page for the Zoom details. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Craven. We appreciate that. Did anybody else? I don't see any hands. Okay. Thank you so much. We don't have an executive session, so is there a motion to adjourn? Councilmember, I see her hand. Second by Councilmember Milawambwe. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Very good. Thank you. I appreciate everything that everybody's done. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Take care.